Hello students, Dr. Meyer here. Welcome to part 2 of the Servant Leadership Service Learning Project orientation. During part 2, the purpose of this orientation is really to get you acquainted with the Servant Leadership Service Learning Project, kind of the nuts and bolts of the project, so you will know by the end of this exactly what you need to do in order to fulfill the requirements of your service learning project. So part 2 of this orientation has 3 goals. The first is to explain the Servant Leadership Service Learning Project assignment and expectations. Secondly, we'll be considering and choosing a potential project, and then you'll be thinking about next steps and how to get started with your service. And then finally, we'll end the presentation with aspiring to excel as a servant leader, and you'll be learning about the Servant Leadership Honor Cord Award that you could apply for at graduation. So let's get started with a little bit more information just about the Servant Leadership Service Learning Project. First of all, as you've already read in many of the documents, you are required 15 hours minimum per student of service learning this semester. This semester, we have both virtual and face-to-face options available, and I will explain more of that in the document on D2L. There may be some restrictions regarding face-to-face options, but that will be clarified in the document. So what you need to know is that we have been approved for both some virtual and face-to-face options. In addition to that, you will be assigned into servant leadership teams. And in those teams, there'll be about 4 to 5 students in your team, and I will be assigning those. In those teams, you will meet 3 times during the semester, and I will guide you through all of this, by the way. But in those teams, you'll meet for Synchronous Team Engagements, or what we call STEs. And in that STE, you'll be meeting online with your 4 or 5 teammates to discuss your servant leadership projects. And also there'll be some information on the course content that you'll discuss as well. So know that those are coming up, and more information will be coming forward with that. The first STE will actually be assigned this week during week 4, and there's a document in the folder that really explains the questions you'll ask and the teammates that you have, what you can discuss as a team. Okay, your STE will also include a final presentation in which you will virtually present at the end of the semester with your online teammates regarding the service you provided in your servant leadership service learning project. So I'll share more information about that in a minute. Next, the overview and timeline of the project. I'll outline that in this slideshow, and then you already have read last week during week 3 the servant leadership components and grading criteria. That document is in the folder as well. So I know a big question that a lot of students have is, what are some of the options that I could choose for service learning? In your folder in D2L, there is a whole list of virtual service learning options as well as face-to-face. Some of the virtual options included in the list, first of all, you're going to complete a windshield survey assignment. This is something you'll be doing this week. It is worth 50 points, but you can also count up to 2 hours of that assignment towards your 15 service learning hours. You may do this virtually, or you may physically do it by driving through your neighborhood, as I mentioned before, or even walking your neighborhood or taking public transportation. So remember, you can count some of that time, up to 2 hours, towards your 15 total for your service learning project. Another virtual learning idea is to organize a socially distanced food drive or even a socially distanced diaper drive. Or you could connect with elderly in your neighborhood, maybe help the elderly or the most vulnerable get groceries or do some shopping for them and do a front porch drop off. You could create online lesson plans for elementary students at home, whether that be for learning during the summer or even learning in the fall, any time of year really. You could write letters or create cards for those elderly in a nursing home or even the most vulnerable populations, even in hospitals. Letters or cards will really brighten the people's day, and so that's an option. You could create a blog or a newsletter or a newspaper, maybe highlighting important things about COVID-19 that we've explored. You could assist a neighbor with yard work, whether that be raking or mowing or planting flowers, shoveling snow, all sorts of examples of yard work. So those are just some of the virtual service learning options, and there are more than that listed on the form in D2L, but I just wanted to highlight a few of them today. Here are some of the face-to-face service learning options. And again, remember, there will be more detail about face-to-face learning options as we begin to open up from the pandemic. And so you'll notice some restrictions possibly in the D2L folder, so be looking for that. But here are some face-to-face options that we think are great options for you to consider. First, you could donate blood or donate plasma. You could be a door screener for a hospital or clinic. And remember, there may be some requirements like wearing PPE or socially distancing, washing hands, taking temperatures before you would do any face-to-face service learning. So keep that in mind that we have to follow any COVID-19 or health regulations, okay? Another common one is to assist with grab-and-go meal distributions, either at local schools or local food pantries. You could connect with a local church and ask your church about volunteer opportunities. Maybe there's an opportunity to clean or sanitize, or even help with yard work, or maybe gardening, or even childcare within the church. Another example of where you could help is working for a community partner named Habitat for Humanity, where they rebuild houses. There's also a restore within Habitat for Humanity that you could volunteer at. St. Vincent de Paul is a local organization in Des Moines, and they have opportunities that you could do face-to-face. Meals from the Heartland, where they package meals, and that is also in West Des Moines, and that's an option for you to consider. JAPA is a wonderful organization where you would actually be going out on routes to the homeless population in Des Moines. You'd be with a community partner that would help navigate that route. But wonderful opportunity with JAPA. And then you also might have other ideas that aren't on the list, either in this presentation or even in the list that's in D2L. And so you may propose those ideas, whether they're virtual or face-to-face. Just simply ask permission before you do any service. Ask for permission if you have a different idea that's not on the list. So there's many options available to serve the most vulnerable in your community. Let's think about how we connect Greenleaf's ideas to our service learning. So during weeks 1 and week 2, we really explored the Greenleaf characteristics. And so as you start to think about your service and your project ideas and what you want to do in your community, we really want you to make connections to the characteristics that Greenleaf talked about. So as you think about whatever service you might choose or whatever service initiatives pique your interest, think about which Greenleaf characteristics will you use to address the needs in your community as you do this service. Maybe you'll become more aware of the needs in your community. Maybe you'll exhibit listening skills. Maybe you'll have some empathy for those that you're serving. So as you begin to think about your service learning project, we really are going to ask you to make connections to at least 3 of those characteristics. And then you'll be thinking about what are your next steps and how will you get started with your service. Let me move to the next slide. So your next steps will be to complete the Servant Leadership Service Learning Project proposal form. And that proposal is actually, it's all one form. It's actually called the verification form, and it's in the Dropbox folder. And the proposal is simply this top half of the form that's highlighted in yellow. So this you will complete. You'll write a brief summary of your proposed project. So whether that's, doing a virtual project or a face-to-face project, you'll write a little bit about it here. This text box will be expandable, so you can write as much as you would like. Where it says 3 objectives that you need to list, that is where you're going to make connections to those Greenleaf characteristics. So you'll need to think about at least 3 Greenleaf ideas to incorporate in your proposed project. So maybe you're going to incorporate listening or awareness or empathy or building community. All of those would be examples of the objectives you might use. Okay, so this top half of the form will be assigned, I believe, next week, and it's all in D2L. You'll be able to find it, and you will need to complete that, and your professor has to approve that before you begin your service. So that's the proposal, and this is worth, I believe, 50 points. Okay, then you're going to document your hours. So after a project has been approved, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, or maybe a little bit of both, because you can sort of cater to your needs, then you will keep track of your service learning hours right here in the middle of this verification form. And that part is highlighted in yellow on this slideshow. So make sure that you keep track every day that you serve for that organization. You'll need to write the date of service, a description of what you completed, and then the hours. And please do include like 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then you could even write 2 hours. That helps us as we add up the hours at the end of the semester. Okay, so that is the document or log, and that also is worth some points for the project. And then I want to talk a little bit about these synchronous team engagements that I mentioned earlier in the slideshow. Synchronous team engagements are worth 50 points each. In these engagements, you're going to arrange a time with your online group. Now remember, these are your small groups that I'll be assigning you to, probably 4 or 5 students in each. You're going to meet virtually for about 20 minutes via Microsoft Teams. I will be providing your team with questions that you'll discuss. So you simply will, just to get started, will find a time that works for everyone in your group. That's maybe the hardest part about this assignment, is finding the time that works for everyone. You are going to be recording each STE session, and you'll be posting it in the Dropbox at the end of the session so that I can issue a grade. During the synchronous team engagement, you'll take turns sharing and discussing the reflection questions that I've provided, and then you'll assign a teammate afterwards to post the recording into the Dropbox. By the way, you can count the time you spend completing these STEs, and so you can count those towards your service learning hours, so be sure to record the dates and times on your verification form. Okay, I will guide you through the STE process as well, but just know that that those will be coming up. And finally, I wanted to share a little bit about aspiring servant leaders who may be interested in the Service Learning Honor Cord Award. So students who go above and beyond the required service learning hours for graduation are eligible to earn this award. And you'll see in the chart, based on your program over here on the left, you'll see how many hours are required in the course of servant leadership, and then additional hours if you want to continue service. You possibly could apply for an Honor Cord Award. So for example, if you are a bachelor's student earning a bachelor's degree, you need 15 hours of service learning in order to graduate, and that's what you're doing through this course. But if you want to continue your service or do even more hours this semester, if you earn up to 30 additional hours for a total of 45, you would be eligible for the Service Learning Honor Cord Award at graduation. If you're in an associate's program, you need 15 hours of service learning to graduate. And so then you would need an additional 15 for a total of 30 to earn the Honor Cord Award. Okay, a certificate program does not have servant leadership hours required, but if you wanted to serve as on behalf of Mercy College, you could earn 15 service learning hours and also apply for the Honor Cord Award. So more information will be forthcoming about that later in the semester, but there is an application form on the website. You can find it here. If you have questions or are interested in this option, you can contact Dr. Joe Moravec. He's a professor of servant leadership. You can even contact me, and I'm happy to answer those questions as well. Okay, finally, we heard a little bit from Fred Rogers earlier in this presentation, and so I want to leave you with the opportunity to lead with a servant's heart. And I really like this quote by Fred Rogers. He said, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" And so as we wrap up this presentation, that quote just really makes me think about the wonderful opportunity we have to be servant leaders, not only through this course at Mercy College, but hopefully you will continue being a servant leader even after you complete the course. So if there are any final thoughts or questions about the Servant Leadership Service Learning Project, please reach out to me or your servant leadership professor, and we are happy to answer them. We look forward to a great semester and to growing with you as a servant leader.